Hello, everybody. Uh, Today we got a fun bunch of demos lined up again. No boring slides, lots of demos. And my name is Brian Mason. I'm just here to introduce the stars of the show here, Gary Block and Mike Terrell, a couple of principal engineers for 2Point, a couple of MVPs, smart guys, big brains. They're going to show you how to make hard stuff look easy and give you confidence that you can do it too, because they know what they're doing and it's not that hard once you see them explain it all. We have Q&A open, so if you have any questions during the meeting, ask please in the Q&A section. The chat area we're gonna kind of shut down here, just so that you can focus on what they're saying and not pay attention to food and games and other kind of comments that are going on. What they're going to show is really complex stuff, so we want you to pay attention to it and get something out of it this time. But again, do make use of the Q&A section. We'll answer questions there as the meeting goes along. And with that, I guess I'll give it to Gary.
Yeah, welcome. Mike and I will be going through drivers today and all the different methods for importing and applying the drivers during the DeployR task sequence. Let's pull up the agenda, Mike.
Yep, sure. Today this is all about DeployR and drivers. We did a getting started webinar, our last webinar, which you could find on our YouTube channel. So if you're just getting started, make sure you review that one first. But we thought we would take the opportunity to kind of dig a little bit deeper into drivers and what we're doing in the DeployR to try to make drivers as easy as possible. It's usually kind of a sticking point. If you don't have the right drivers, oftentimes things don't work exactly right. So we're going to talk about your WinPE drivers, driver packs, if you're still going to manage driver packs. We got cloud drivers now as well, and some other ways to actually get drivers. And then we'll open it up for Q&A towards the end. But there's also a Q&A panel, so if you do have questions that come up during the presentation, be sure to put them in there. Someone will answer. So WinPE drivers, that's kind of the first place to start. So we did touch on this lately when we talked about the DeployR getting started guide, because first thing you want to do is create a boot image, and that boot image is going to need drivers unless you're strictly testing on a virtual platform that doesn't require any drivers. But this is a good place to start, because then you can add these prior to generating your boot image. We'll go ahead and put these links when we do the recording in the description on the YouTube channel, but we made an outline of where to go to get WinPE drivers from all the different manufacturers. So this is going to be needed even if you want to leverage cloud drivers. You still got to have drivers inside your WinPE or WinRE boot image, even when building from the cloud. So just keep that in mind. But this is where you can go to actually get these driver packs.
So one note is Lenovo is kind of the odd duck out on these. The other main OEMs, they have like a specific driver pack that you can, it covers all of their models. So then typically once a year or a couple times a year, they'll re-upgrade that driver pack to include the newest model support. Lenovo doesn't do that. You have to go out to each specific model and download a little, they have it's called SCCM pack for Windows PE. And so it's usually pretty small, just a few megs, because it's just the drivers that support that specific model. So if you have a lot of Lenovos, then you'd have to go out there and grab quite a few. I've got a few different Lenovo models in my lab, and I basically grabbed the driver pack, which is like 3 or 4 meg, just for the latest one I have, and it's been working pretty well. But I also have HP and Dell in my lab. So what I've done is I take the HP driver pack by default, and then I've layered on the Lenovo ones. And so far that's supported all my models, including the Dells, for getting the basic WinPE drivers.
Yeah. And then we also have a slide here of where to get other driver packs, so like your full Windows driver packs. And like I said, we'll make sure that these links are available so that you can use these if you're still downloading or curating your own driver packs, so to speak. So the other thing to mention on the WinPE driver packs is try to keep them as light as possible, because they're going to bloat the boot image. We actually have seen some customers just dump tons and tons and tons of drivers into WinPE, but really you just need the ones that are going to make the system work. So it's typically your network drivers and your storage drivers. If you're putting more than that in there, then you're unnecessarily bloating that boot image.
Yeah, every so often you'll need to grab special ones for like the touchpad or the touchscreen if you want those available in WinPE. But those are typically also included in the driver packs. It's just when you did it in CM, CM would automatically default to just storage and network. So then it would not apply those. So then in CM, you had to do extra things, whereas the DeployR, it will just pull those in as well.
So let's jump into demo time here. Do you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I don't see it on my end. Okay, so just real quick, so we'll just recap here since we're going to start talking about WinPE drivers. Here's the links that we have that we'll provide that you can easily go and grab all these. And I forget who was the first one to pioneer these driver packs. I think maybe it was Dell that did it, and the other ones kind of followed suit, which is nice. We've got the HP ones as well. And typically these are going to be pretty small in size. Make sure you're getting the ones that are the latest that support the version of WinPE that you're using. And that's probably another good point is we are actually standardizing on the WinPE 24H2 80K right now. There's a newer one that's released, but it's got loads of issues. So do not use that latest one that they have released until they fix those issues. Like Gary said, for Lenovo, basically you got to kind of go search on the actual model, and then you'll see a WinPE 11 driver pack that you can actually download here and grab that. So for Panasonic, they also provide one as well that you can grab. However, Surface sadly does not. They do have an article out here that tells you how to enable this to kind of create your own WinPE driver pack. It's kind of a little bit more work, but once you get one, then it does tend to work out pretty well. So might be a good kind of follow-up blog item. So yeah, so what we want to do to create our driver pack is the first thing that you really want to do is when you download it, make sure you extract those files. So they might download in a cab format, they might download it in an executable format, things like that. Just make sure you extract them. We do not actually pull them out at this point. We've been talking about that to make it even easier so you don't have to do any of that stuff. But for right now, they do need to be expanded. We also talked about in the getting started is kind of create a source repository where you're going to maintain your source that you use in DeployR, because once you upload it to DeployR, it doesn't make any kind of persistent source location in DeployR like Configuration Manager does. So if you ever need to update something or add something, it's just good practice just to have kind of a standard repository. So I've kind of split mine down based on the different content items that we have. So we got applications, drivers, and operating systems, and other content items. But for this one, we'll go into drivers, and I'm going to kind of split them down between ARM64 and x64 right now. So if we go in here, I've got my WinPE driver pack source, and I've just kind of split these models out. So I do have my Dell drivers in here, and I don't use too many of them for the Dell, but if you do have docks that have the network cards and things like that, you probably want to include that driver as well. So these are all expanded out, as you can see, and now what I can simply do is come into my DeployR console and click add here. And we're just going to give it we're going to call it, I like to call mine WinPE X64 driver pack. So something that's kind of easy to identify in this particular case. We don't, I'm not going to add any tags on this one. I'll add it for the full-on driver pack, but we did add tags. I forget what build we added that in. It's more for full driver pack matching right now, which is nice. This is going to be a driver pack, so that's our purpose. And I'm going to point to a folder, so I want to make sure we grab folder. Now, what you're wanting to do is open this item up after creation. So if we click save here, now we kind of got our shell for our driver pack. And what we need to do first is create a new version here. And this is going to be in development at the onset. We can't change this to active. So there's a difference between in development and active when we do driver pack matching. But for WinPE, it's not as important, but I'll show you how to flip that at the end here. Since this is going to include drivers from different manufacturers and models, and since it's for WinPE, we can actually leave the manufacturer and model blank for this particular driver pack. So do that, and then now we've got our shell. We can go ahead and click our choose file, which is actually, we're going to choose the folder. And I'm just going to select my WinPE here and go ahead and click upload. It's going to upload 131 files here. And then down here, it's gone through all these files, and we'll go ahead and click upload all. And this is going to go through, and what it's doing is it's creating a WIM file in the background that's going to contain all your WinPE drivers, which then we can go ahead and use those. So we can see our relative path to our content location is here, and we've gone ahead and WIM these up because WIMs are great. It's a single file to download. They're single instance within the WIM, and then WIMs also dedupe really nicely for branch catch purposes. So we can see that this is pretty tiny. So we're not going to add much to our boot image in this particular case. We'll see here that it still shows as in development. So I can go ahead and click edit here, and I can switch this to active. That way I know I have my active driver pack. So once I have my WinPE driver pack, now we can come over to our boot image. And we want to select our WinPE X64 boot image. And one thing I will repoint out is the root certificates. So if you could see here, I've added a content item that includes my root certificates. And I think this question just came up on an email I saw earlier today. This is necessary if you're using the self-sign certificates. Like, we provide those instructions in the installation and configuration of how you can generate it, one using iPXE. So you want to take the root certificate and put it in a content item and make sure it's in there. Or if you're using your own internal PKI, you want to put the root CA in there so it gets injected into Windows PE. If you're using a public certificate that's got native support in WinPE, you don't need to create a content item for that. So just keep that in mind, because that's something that does get missed quite a bit. And then when you boot up, it's unable to communicate to the DeployR server. So here we got our drivers. We want to go ahead and select this here, and we see that we've got our driver pack already listed. And we want to select version 1 again and go ahead and click OK. And now we have the ability to go ahead and generate this boot image, and it's going to go through, inject all the drivers into the boot image, and we'll be good to go. So if you do make changes, make sure that you come in and actually, I believe it's regenerate the boot image. I always get these confused. There's 2 phases that the boot image actually goes through. One is where it does all the basic stuff. So I think the Stifler client's in phase 1. And then if you just hit generate, then it does phase 2 and it injects the extra stuff in there. So when you do make changes, just make sure that you go and click the right one. Also, kind of a good rule of thumb is between upgrades, I always gotten into the habit of just completely regenerating the boot image after the upgrade to pick any files up that may or may not have changed. So if you're not good at reading release notes and things like that, just come in and regenerate, and then you should be good to go. So So that's the WinPE driver pack. Next, let's talk about injecting drivers. So for this step, let me shift over to this one here. Is you're going to want to download the driver cabs or the XEs. Again, these are the links that we kind of showed earlier. Each of them do provide downloads for this. Go ahead and make sure you expand them out accordingly, so that when you pull them into DeployR, they're already expanded, and it's going to go ahead and whim them out. So same thing for the Lenovo's. You're going to need to do a search on it, but then you'll actually see a full-on driver pack for particular models. So you can go through and do that. And then the Panasonic actually provides these as well, full driver packs. Surface, they do provide driver packs. You just got to come to this particular page, and then you can come through and check your Surface model, and then it'll provide an MSI file. So there are ways to expand the MSI file out if you want to build a driver pack, or you can just apply these once in the full OS, because this will include other things like firmware and things like that as well too. So that's typically how I do my Surface devices. If you're a Surface shop, is I won't necessarily create a driver pack for these. I'll get it into the full OS and then have a step that applies the firmware and drivers step there.
So Mike, you would create like an application for your Surface devices?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So, okay. So let's go to injecting drivers. So we have a couple different ways that we can do driver injection. Like we said, we tried to keep things simple. So instead of the old days where you're creating a step per model and then putting conditions on that step, we've tried to make things easier by actually doing detection on the make alias, the model alias, make and model. So we kind of have a matching properties here. So if you come in and look at this inject driver step under step definitions, it'll go through and it'll tell you exactly what it's looking for. And you're going to use this when you actually fill out your driver pack information for that manufacturer and model field. And you can put different things in there. So like, for example, I know Gary likes to put in the product code for the HPs instead of the actual model name, because the model names could be a little bit off depending on the manufacturer, that kind of thing. So we give you some flexibility, but our goal is to kind of go through and actually do this matching as well. And what we also have in the documentation is this kind of digs into it a little bit deeper, because you're probably wondering, well, how do I know what my makes and models are to fill out that information? So if you come down here under reference, task sequence, hardware, and then make alias, model alias, system alias, you get a nice little PowerShell script that you can kind of hit the copy button, and you can paste that into PowerShell ISC. Just make sure you spit out this information here, hit play, and it's going to give you everything that we actually see here for make, system alias, make alias, model alias, that kind of thing. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you to get matches, and then that way you'll just have one step that says inject drivers, and it can handle all of your models that have this information populated correctly. So we have seen some issues on people that use like white box type builds, where some of this information isn't filled out in the BIOS or in UEFI correctly. So you might have to create the other type of driver pack step, which Gary is going to cover, and then put a condition on that. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's get back to DeployR. Or first, let me take a look at this. So we're going to go back up into drivers here under x64. And I've got my Win11 drivers all split out. And I just have one for my Dell Optiplex right now. I just like to sort these things out. So this is what it looks like expanded. If we dig in, I don't know why they put so many different subdirectories in here. But we can see that this is what it looks like. And these are kind of all the drivers that that expand into little files, tons of little files. So if we go back to our DeployR console, and we're going to create another content item here. I'll go ahead and say add. And then for this one, you want to give it a name that's kind of easily recognizable when you're searching in the DeployR list of content items. So I might call this one just Dell Optiplex Micro 7010. And not that we have another operating system yet, but you can also put like an 11 if we do all of a sudden get a Windows 12 or something like that. Once again, for purpose, we select driver pack, and this is going to be a folder. Now this is where we can put in a tag. So we can kind of do further matching on these tags. If we create one called Windows 11 with no space, hit enter, and then I might want to put an x64. And so that way I know it's Windows 11 x64. So this will give you a little bit more filtering. And primarily this is the case if you want to continue to use that generic inject driver step and you're still maintaining Windows 10 driver packs. So if you got just regular Windows 10, maybe you're doing extended support, or you're still supporting the Windows 10 LTSC versions on certain models that you're also running Windows 11 on, you can put these tags in here so that it makes sure it picks the correct driver pack that you've uploaded. So you don't want to apply the Windows 11 driver pack to Windows 10 LTSC, that kind of thing. So, and then we'll go ahead and open after creation here and hit save. That creates our shell. We're going to create a new version of this particular driver pack. And then this is where we're going to put so I'm going to put the make alias, which is just going to be Dell in this case, and then the model is going to be Optiplex Micro 7010. So it's going to use that information for matching. If you don't get the matching correctly for some reason, make sure you didn't fat finger anything, or have any weird characters in there and that kind of thing. And this is also where Gary will put in like product codes instead of actually the model name. So it'll look for that as well. Don't necessarily need to add tags to this. You can if you want. It's going to do the tags off of the main content item shell. So we'll go ahead and hit save here. We're going to hit choose file, and then we're going to come back to where we have our source for this particular driver pack. And you can drill in as far as you want, so you don't have to go through all the extra folders. Go ahead and click upload. It sees that we got over 1,000 files in here, which is really good for the WIM. Now, what you'll notice if you're running the console remotely, or even if you're running it on the server, I'm actually running it directly on the server here, is that this step might take a little bit, and that's something that we're actually looking into. You might get this page is not responding, so we'll just hit wait. But this will eventually come back and list all the drivers once it goes through them. So we're looking at ways to speed that up. But if you do get those messages during the initial thing, then don't be alarmed, just be patient. And it is quicker when doing it from the server, and we're going to do some tweaks to kind of speed all that up. Same thing for uploading. Then we go ahead and click the upload all button. This will take a little bit longer to upload in certain cases, but you can go ahead and upload this. The nice thing is that you can actually do all this with PowerShell if you prefer PowerShell over the dashboard for doing things. It's easy to automate, especially if you're moving from MDT or from config manager and you have a well-defined source. You can just rip through and create all your driver packs that way. So with that, I will hand it off to Gary to talk about how to do that.
Yeah. So one other note too, as I was watching Mike go, he mentioned I like to use the product code, and I do. And I was doing that for Dell quite a bit too, but then in this last set of like models they released, what I found was that they had like a single model name, but it covered like 8 or 9 different SKUs. So what I ended up doing is basically I take a look at the models and determine if the SKU has more models that pertain to it, I'd use that. but if the models names have more SKUs associated with it, I go with the model name, because I want to have the least amount of content pulled into DeployR. I don't want to have duplicates. But so as Mike was saying, we can do all this with PowerShell too. So I'm going to have a simple example here. Now I've got a driver pack here for my HP EliteBook 840 G5 notebook PC. Yeah, that's a wonderful model name. And half the time it will say like new to book or some other weird combination in the UEFI. For some reason, if you ever got like motherboard changes, like model names are always messed up. So that's why I like to always use the 83B2, which is their product code. So I've got this extracted. So I'm just going to go ahead and set my make alias, and then I'm going to set my model alias. And then so inside of DeployR, you can connect into using the module, and we've got documentation on that. Let me just pull that up here for a sec. So what I'm demoing here is actually out on our webpage in the docs under scripting for DeployR server, automating content creation, and generating a driver pack. And it will walk through what's exactly going on here. So in the example on the docs, it's for a Dell, and it's for the Pro 14 Plus, which has like 4 different SKUs associated with it, which is why I went with the model instead of the SKU for that. And so what we're going to end up doing is then inside of DeployR, it has the module. So you would just import the module first, and then you get these different functions available. So I'm going to go ahead and run line 3 here, which is saying create new DeployR content item. It's going to be a name. So I'm setting it to a name driver pack, the make alias, model alias. I'm telling it the type, that it's a folder. The purpose is that it's a driver pack, and then a description. So you can, these are all the fields that Mike was showing you inside the UI itself. But instead, I'm going to go ahead and just create that. So now that that's created, that was kind of anticlimactic, but we'll head back over to the console now. Do a refresh. If I do a search on 83B2, you can see here, it just created this. This is the shell that was just created. Now there's no new version. So as Mike's showing that it was like a 2-step process, inside of PowerShell, it is also a 2-step process where first you're setting up the initial driver pack content item, and then we're going to set up the version. So we'll go back over here. Now I saved that shell information into the variable new CI. So we're going to go ahead and just grab the ID for that. So with every content item, there is an ID. So with this, the content ID is this GUID here. So I'm feeding that into this command down here. And now I'm going to set my source folder. As Mike was saying, it's really a good idea to keep track of your source and be well organized. DeployR doesn't have a tie to it, as Mike was saying. So it's more important, like if you're over like, oh, where is that source? In CM, you would just go in and look for the content source so you could grab it and update it. Whereas in DeployR, you need to remember it. So I do a little trick in mine where I actually just throw it in the description. So here we're going to run the new DeployR content item version. So this is like in the console when you click the new version. So we will go ahead and fill out the content item that we just grabbed. The description is where I like to just slap where I'm storing it in my folder structure. And then we're gonna provide the exact same information that we provided in the UI, the make alias, the model alias, and then the source folder. So I'm gonna go ahead and run line 7. And now it is running. And now it is done. Let's go back over. Now I cheated a little bit and I deleted the audio drivers and the video drivers because I wanted the demo to go a little faster, because if you know that sometimes that's like a gig or 2 in and of itself. So I'm gonna hit refresh here. You can see now that it filled out that version. My content is quite small because I deleted the audio and video drivers to make this demo a lot quicker. My description automatically filled out. So now, because I'm getting old and I forget where I put stuff, I put it in my descriptions. And the model, the manufacturer and model is filled out automatically for me. So at this point, I could go in and say, yeah, it looks good. I'll set it to active, which you could also do with PowerShell. You can do pretty much everything with PowerShell. So that was just a simple example of how you can start to do this. Now, I'm sure some people's wheels are starting to turn. Like, hey, I could actually like start scripting, pulling in, basically make an array of all your different content sources, and you can suck it in. And that's exactly what I do. I have automated all of this for a couple of customers now that we've been helping with their MDT migrations. Basically, just script all the content creation, pulling it right from their MDT deployment share, and just populating it right into DeployR. All right, so then let's see the next thing. All right, so then we've got our driver packs. We are going to go ahead and make a new path sequence here. We'll do a bare metal. We're going to open that so I don't lose it. All right, so I'll just assign an OS quick. All right, so then we've got our inject drivers. So by default, there's just nothing to do. It's fantastic. As long as you set the model alias and the make alias properly, as the task sequence is running, it's going to reach back to DeployR with the model alias and make alias and the other information. Say, hey, do you have a driver pack that matches this criteria? And if it does, it's going to be, here it is, go ahead. And if it doesn't, then it's just not going to apply drivers. So we've also had some customers at this point be like, hey, I want to, for certain models, I want to manage the driver packs. And for some, I don't. So what they've done is right after this step, they are adding the apply inject drivers from cloud step. So what they're doing is this. And then based upon variable that gets created in the inject driver step, if this is successful, it skips this, but if it does not return a driver pack, then it goes to this one, because they still want drivers to be downloaded for the models, but they might have a bunch of off models that they only have one or two of laying around, and they don't want to manage driver packs for that. So then on those, they're just going to let those go out to the cloud. So the same with the logic is basically the same on both of these. You don't have to do anything, just add the steps definitions into your task sequence. And the steps are doing all the logic behind the scene to match the driver pack either inside of DeployR or with the catalog that we are hosting at 2 Point. It's going to reach out to our API, go through and figure out which was the appropriate driver pack, then reach out to the OEM to download that driver pack, expand it in WinPE, and then apply it. And that's all done for you. Now we, as Mike was also mentioning, maybe you're buying some like no-name white box devices, and sometimes it when you pull up the information, it actually just says like NA or to be set by the OEM, and they never set it. In which case you're not going to get any match. So we have another step here for in those situations, inject driver pack step. So the instantly I added it, you saw that, hey, there's an issue here. You need to do something, where that didn't happen with the other ones, because these other ones, there's nothing to do. But with this one here, you'll have to go in here and go ahead and set which specific driver pack you want. So I'm going to go ahead and just say this driver pack for the fun of it. So now what you would end up doing is you'd want to have a condition, because you don't want to have this by default. Just like in MDT and CM, it's going to always run this step. So we're going to want to put a condition on here, and we are going to use a query. So I'm going to say model or make alias equals HP, And then I'm going to do add condition. I'm going to do system alias, if I can spell, equals 83b2. 83b2. Now, when this step runs, I'm going to go ahead and save everything. When this step runs, and you can see now that there is a little condition shows up here, the little icon. So it's only going to apply on HP devices that have the product code of 83b2. And that's the best way then to deal with like that off brand hardware that you still need to apply driver packs to, but might not have anything. One other thing to note, especially with the deploy driver packs, when you're pulling content from DeployR, DeployR is going to automatically go ahead and start peering that. So it's going to be able to pull from peers that you have already deployed in your environment. When you do any of the content from the cloud, including the driver packs, natively that will not be peering. So it's always going to go back to the internet. So even if you've deployed 5 devices already that are identical and you've got that driver pack sitting on the devices, because it didn't come from the DeployR server, which creates all the extra metadata needed for branch caching, it's just going to reach out to the internet each time. So you will get none of the peering efficiencies when you're pulling from the cloud. If you've got huge internet pipes, it's not a big deal. But it's just one thing to keep in mind if you are trying to manage your bandwidth as well. You might want to do the extra step of pulling things into DeployR so that you can then leverage the branch cache efficiencies. Another thing that some people have wanted to do is let's go back to that white box situation. As long as like the manufacturers are putting drivers up into Windows Update, they don't have to worry so much about creating their own special driver pack. I mean, they're going to want to test this, of course, but what they can do is, as long as you've got the drivers in WinPE and you have a basic drivers that get applied to the OS, so that once it reboots into like Ubi, that it has enough drivers to continue, that it would have your storage drivers, your network drivers. At that point, we've got the install update step. By default, it's going to opt into Microsoft Update to get the additional updates for like .NET and all the other things that aren't specifically Windows updates. And then we also have the checkbox by default that's going to go ahead and get you up to the latest CU and patch any of the software that's installed. There's this extra third option that's called install driver updates. And so what that is going to do is it's going to scan the device, reach out to Windows Update service, and look for all the updated drivers. This step works pretty well as long as the manufacturers are uploading things to Windows Updates. I found that most of the time it's pretty current. So like if I were to run it on a brand new HP, it would get most of the drivers. And then if I run like the HP utility, it might find a couple of just slightly newer versions that I would then use like the HP utility. So that's a great way that we're not covering here, but to get all of your drivers updated is to leverage the OEM tools as well. And you can make like task sequence steps to do that. I think we'll get into that maybe in one of our advanced webinars. Let's see, so I just wanted to show the log file from what that looks like here. About to present. Let's see. Okay. All right, so start. All right. There we go. All right. So just wanted to pull a quick snip out of here, but basically this log file is from the DeployR run. You can see that it pulled down a lot of drivers from Windows Update, and this is running on a fairly new Dell device that I had set up. So it went through, and over the course of about 15 minutes, it downloaded and installed all of the drivers. I did not, it already installed a Dell driver pack specific for this, but that's, like, as you know, drivers are getting released so frequently just due to vulnerabilities, enhancements, that even the current driver pack will typically have several updates since it was released. And since they only update driver packs like 6 months to a year, it's typically way behind. Now it gets you all the functionality you need, but it's probably not as efficient as it should be for, which is why you'd want to keep your drivers updated post deployment or even during deployment ideally. So here, this step, it's showing that it's downloaded quite a few different drivers, and then at the end of the Windows update step, if it needs a reboot, it will automatically reboot, and then it will try again. So what this log doesn't show you is that it actually ran the step 3 times, and each time it added additional drivers, because sometimes like drivers are dependent on other drivers. So DeployR has that built in where if you run just this one single step for install updates, it's actually going to run, it might be 3 or 4 or even 5 reboots during that one step, and it will continue because it might be pulling down Windows updates that need a reboot, driver updates that need a reboot, and it's going to keep rescanning until it finds no more available updates and then move on to the next step in your process. Mike, was there anything else that I missed that we needed to cover, or are we ready for Q&A already?
I think you covered it all.
Excellent.
All right, that was awesome, guys. You guys are big brains. I'm going to enable the chat again so we can pick up chat in the chat window, and then I'm going to let you unmute yourselves. Come off mute if you want to ask a question. Don't be shy.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the first question of the audience. Is anybody who was not able to get to the Q&A? We did have a lot of questions in there. If there's somebody who couldn't see it or something, let us know. This is the first time we've done just the Q&A section during a meeting.
Well, we have a hand up from Ronan.
Hey,
Go
Gary.
ahead.
Hey, Mike. Yeah,
Hey,
hi.
Ronan.
Gary, just wanted to come back on your comment on the caching with respect to drivers. I fully get it. So if you could just restate it again for me, please.
Yeah, so all content that comes from the DeployR server directly will be branch cache enabled by default natively. So like even in the boot or WinPE phase, the running branch cache is supported natively. It's all built what our dev team has created. So if you were like in CM, you had to use our 2-pint OSD toolkit to enable that extra features. It wasn't built into what CM did. So in DeployR, we made it really easy so that just natively all working. Whereas if you're pulling content from the internet during your task sequence, because it's not funneled through the DeployR server to enable all the metadata required for branch cache, it's not going to be peerable on the devices. So it's going to pull 100% of that content from internet locations. Whereas if you're pulling from the DeployR server, it will probably pull a significant amount from local peers if you've already got the content out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the fundamental difference between an on-premise installation and a cloud server.
No. So
No?
like if I have my DeployR server hosted out, I do, as long as I'm having my content come to the DeployR server itself, it doesn't matter where the DeployR server is. But
Okay.
on those steps where you're like saying, hey, I want to install Adobe Reader, but I don't want to, I'm just going to point my like write a PowerShell script that downloads Adobe Reader from Adobe directly versus
Got it.
uploading Adobe into DeployR. That's when you're not going to get the branch cache.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah. Good to see you, Ronan.
Too.
What
Hey,
about
Roberto.
Hey guys, quick. So the question I have is do the DeployR devices running the DeployR task sequence? Do they need to be running the task sequence? I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself. Do they need to be running the task sequence for them to be peering, or they can be just devices that I have built with DeployR and now they are out in the wild?
Right. Yeah. So like once you've deployed, so let's say machine one, you've deployed it now with DeployR. So you've got one machine out there. It didn't pull any content from peers because it's machine one. Now machine two starts up and it's going to see on that same subnet that, oh, you've already deployed machine one, and it's going to start trying to pull content from machine one as well. So you have to have used DeployR. Yeah, there's ways around that, but basically it's going to be based upon the ones you've pre-deployed. They don't need to be in a deployment state any longer.
Okay.
Because it's still sitting in their branch cache. And then during the OSD process, it's looking at those machines as branch cache to see if they've got what it needs.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I want to, because we don't have that many that actually go through at the same time, but you know, they get built over days. So if they're available, if they're out and up and running, then and they can be peering their content. That's great.
And that's what's wonderful about branch cache is, like, let's say it's been a few months between deployment and you've even updated your WIM to like the latest one. Like 80% of that WIM is still the same as 3 months ago. So even though it's not the same content item or the exact same thing, it's still going to pull from peers, even though it's like older, staler content.
The other thing that we've done too is actually exported the server secret from Configuration Manager. So if you're using branch cache with CM today, and then use that server secret within DeployR so that it can leverage all that content that's already in the branch cache in the environment. So that's a possibility too.
Ah, awesome. Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah.
And just to add, we have the ability to pre-stage content if you haven't actually deployed one machine yet. So you can pre-stage the content before the deployment as well.
Oh, okay, cool. Good to know. Thank you.
Don't be shy. You can see that's how easy it is to get your question answered. They don't bite.
There are a couple of questions, Brian, in the chat that have come in.
Well, I can ask you guys directly. I can read it. You just mentioned that Adobe is uploaded to DeployR. Is there a version control to allow multiple versions of Adobe to exist? Oof. In case I don't want to remove the old version.
Well, how I would probably do that for now would just be to either create a separate application, or within the application itself, you can set different versions. So let me show you quick here. Share. So for instance, in my environment, I kind of do that with the OS media. Whereas, so I'm keeping previous versions of the OS media. And so what I do is I have different versions here. So if you're doing Adobe, you could do the same thing where you'd have your main content item would be like Adobe Reader. And then your first version would be like version 1.1. And then each time a new one comes out, you could add 1.2, 1.3. And then in your task sequences, when you select the content item, then you also select the the version. So you saw when I was doing that, let's see here, 24. When I added this content to the Apply OS today, I chose version 3. Same thing would be for the applications. You just pick the version that you want. So you can keep them in there if you want. If you've got a specific need for it, but so it's all possible, and you can do it different ways, whatever makes your brain hurt less.
Why do you keep so many versions of the OS?
Mostly for like if I get customer requests to try to reproduce issues. If they're using specific build numbers, then I want to be able to replicate what they have. And I also just wanted to test it out. Trying something new, Brian. I don't necessarily recommend doing that for the WIM, because if you're trying to export your task sequence and all of a sudden now you've got 3 different WIMs associated with it because it's the content item that you need and not just the version. So now, like when I export it, it's 18 gigs instead of just 6. So I'm probably going to rethink how I'm doing that for export reasons. Any other driver questions?
When are you going to have full self-driving?
When he hires a chauffeur. Yeah. But yeah, so PowerShell too, if you want to really do some amazing things in DeployR and save time, I'd highly recommend getting familiar with VS Code, GitHub Copilot. I've been able to, I've got a project from a customer that we're migrating them from MDT to DeployR, and I was able to basically just take their deployment share and tell GitHub Copilot, like, here's my source. Go ahead and pull out all the information vital that I need. So like pull out all the application install strings, all of the locations, and throw that all into a PowerShell object. And once I had that information extracted from their deployment share, I was able to just use these simple commands I showed you to create content items. So it just ripped through in about a half an hour to an hour of having it do the content sources. I had their entire MDT applications, everything migrated right into DeployR. And for me to have like written all that code of like deciphering all the XML and everything behind MDT would have taken quite a while. So I'd highly recommend using Copilot. It's been just phenomenal. Yeah, it makes mistakes, so you're just going back and forth a little bit, but it's still wonderful for doing this. So once you get the basics of doing automation inside of DeployR, like creating your content items, connecting into the server, doing those things, then you can really start going crazy with automation. And I know we're planning to build some other things for like easier driver management for you to like get a catalog and say, yeah, I want this driver pack and this driver pack and put it in. In the meantime, if you want an unsupported community version, I wrote my own based upon like the URLs for HP and Dell. So that's how I populate mine. I can show you what that looks like if you're curious, but oh, and then yeah, so I know on the docs I've also gone through and into some detail, but like I've written scripts that will automatically create like Firefox, Thunderbird, Notepad, different applications, because in my labs I want to populate them quickly. So I can just run the script, and within a couple minutes I've got all these app content items created, and it will update them and whatnot. But I've got other examples out in my personal GitHub under GW block / 2 Pint Labs. So I do a lot of development in my own environment, and until I consider it worthy to be in 2 Pints, it just kind of stays over there in like a dev situation. But if you're ever getting into the PowerShell and you want to see what Gary's working on for automation, you can just hit up my GitHub and steal whatever you like I used to do with Johan all the time in the day.
You're running this remotely or on the DeployR server?
I run it on the DeployR server. It makes some of the connections easier. It already has all the PowerShell things required installed because DeployR needed it. I didn't want to have to like worry about having to dev box with the right .NET and the right PowerShell. So if you're doing automation, it's always just easiest to do it on the DeployR server. Plus, it's faster than if you're doing large imports versus having to go across the wire. But so on 2 Pints GitHub, there is a 2 Pint -deployr, and that is where we're keeping scripts and samples and things for PowerShell automation that that you can steal from it and use. And then on the other side, if you want to look at stuff that's not really fully baked that I'm playing with, you can look at my GitHub.
We got time for at least one more question if someone wants to come off mute.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing everybody at our next one. And Mike and I will be doing a lot of conversations and things at MMS too. So we'll be at conferences, so come and see us there. And I'll be doing some presentations actually on PowerShell with VS Code and GitHub Copilot. So you might see some things that are beneficial there at MMS.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, thanks, guys. That was super informative. Big brains. Impress me every time. Well, thanks to everybody else for joining. This will be recorded, so if you miss the beginning, you can always watch it again. Just go subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll leave this chat running until the top of the hour in case you're shy and you still have a question.
Yeah, it's nice to see so many familiar names. So thanks everyone for coming.
All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end it. Thanks a lot. It was a good show.
Thank you.
But we'll see you all next time.
Thanks.